Ho, ho, howdy, everyone. Pull up a chair, kick up your boots, and take a sip on a nice eggnog? Question mark. It's Support Your Local Podcast, the show where we normally take a look at some of our favorite movies, one chapter at a time. However, right now, though, we're going to have a little bit of fun while we're waiting for our next season when we will look at Sam Raimi's Western, The Quick and the Dead. I'm your host, Robert Smith, coming to you from beautiful Tombstone. Yes, that one. During our break, we are officially in the holiday season, and that means it's time for me to watch my must-see Christmas movies. The 8 weeks leading up to Christmas, I'm going to bring you one of my favorites. And this is in no particular order, much like how I watch them. Just 8 movies that I absolutely have to see before Christmas. It's a tradition. It's a thing. It will make me very grumpy if it doesn't happen. Today, we're going to kick off with what is easily, though not necessarily, the oldest movie on my list. Spoilers, but it is easily the one that I saw or at least remember seeing earliest in my life. For those that heard my hiatus message episode, you know that all this came to me kind of in a muse. So fair warning, I'm literally working this format out as I go. So buckle in and please try to enjoy the ride. But without further ado, let's take a look at the animated Christmas classic, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So a little history of the movie. The movie came out in the holiday season of 1966. It's based, obviously, on the Dr. Seuss book of the same name, and that was released in 1957. Dr. Seuss had already begun to take the children's literature scene over, and he released several books before this, but 1957 is when he does this book and The Cat in the Hat, which easily what makes him a household name. Two of the most iconic books probably in children's literature. Fast forward to 1966, where the TV station CBS is looking to kind of recapture lightning in a bottle. The previous year, they had a huge success on their hands by greenlighting the Charlie Brown Christmas special. Will that be on my list? Stay tuned. Now, much like studios today, they wanted to try to cash in on that. And granted, to their credit, they didn't go the knee-jerk route of doing a sequel. But instead, they started looking at some other hot properties. And here is one that is not only hot, being Dr. Seuss's books, but also has one that is already Christmas themed. So there's no need to shoehorn someone into a Christmas story, which sometimes works. I'm sure you'll see some of those on my list. Spoilers. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, putting a character just in a Christmas setting just because doesn't really work out. But this one was kind of tailored for it. It already had the Christmas theme. So let's step back for a second and take a look at this time frame. And we're not going to go full blown. It came in 69, pun intended, though this time frame works out perfectly for this. So we're hopping into the DeLorean. We're going to go back to the mid-60s, and here are the Christmas TV special releases. In 1964, the Rankin and Bass stop-motion classics are really getting moving with the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer classic. 1965, the very next year, previously mentioned, we have a Charlie Brown Christmas special. In 1966, we have this movie, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. In 1968, we have Little Drummer Boy. In 1969, we have the animated Frosty the Snowman. In 1970, we have Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And this is just ridiculous how year after year after year, those movies were rolling out and are now such iconic Christmas classics. I don't know that we've had anything like that since then. And I wonder, was it because of the booming popularity of TV? Is it because the Christmas season is causing people to be at home watching more TV? Whatever it is, I don't care how many Hallmark movies that get cranked out on Lifetime. And spoilers, you won't be finding any of those on my list. I just simply refuse to care about how many New York businessmen, metrosexuals, are getting dumped by their girlfriends for the rancher lumberjack hunks. Keep it. No one is talking about those movies 60 years later. We are, however, talking about these 60s classics. Just saying. Anywho, back to some Grinching. So this was greenlit for four times the budget of the Charlie Brown Christmas special, and it was first broadcast on December 18th, 1966. It was, as I previously mentioned, on CBS. CBS would then air it annually until 1988. So that would probably be where I would have first seen it. The Turner folks, so we're talking, TBS, TNT, Turner Classic Movies, those would continue the tradition, showing it off and on. ABC has actually owned the rights since 2001, but NBC has an agreement that allows them to air it twice a year, and that's traditionally on Black Friday or the day after Thanksgiving for my non-American friends, and Christmas Day. And I've admittedly cut the cord years ago, so I'm not sure if that's still the case. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know where exactly this is still airing off and on. I watch it on my DVD. I don't watch it on TV, so let me know. So a little bit of my history with the movie. As I mentioned earlier, this would have been the first movie on my list that I would have seen, or I at least remember seeing. I was born in late 1982, so this would have been when I was like young, and seeing the annual airing of CBS, I'm assuming. So growing up, I loved books. I still do, but growing up, I did too. And a majority of the books I had were actually either Richard Scarry books. Are those still a thing? Please go look for some Richard Scarry books. Excellent stuff. And Dr. Seuss. And seeing my book come to life would have been a huge thrill for me. So I would have seen this whenever I could growing up. And it quickly became something that I had to see when I grew into adulthood and I was able to purchase my own DVDs and such. And now that I'm thinking about it, this this may actually be the first on my list that I purchased to allow watching at my convenience. We had a couple of these movies that are going to show up on my list on VHS when I was a kid, but this would have probably been the first one that I purchased myself for my own personal viewing. Now that my wife and we have kids, we have a lot of Dr. Seuss books for them. And this was quickly one of the movies that we showed them routinely during the Christmas season. It's fairly quick in length. So it's a great thing that allows us to let the kids get kind of the thrill of watching something before bed, but it's not hours long. So we don't have to plan like an early supper or a late bedtime or anything like that. If they get their showers done, they get their teeth brushed, they get everything ready for bed. There's 20 some odd minutes before bedtime. Something great that we can pop on that they really enjoy, and it's still done relatively by bedtime. Great thing on my part that I love. My kids now make reading the book on Christmas Eve a tradition for us. It's one of two books that I read to them on Christmas Eve, and I really look forward to it every year. So this is a story that we're all very familiar with. When it is Christmas time, I like to, much to the dismay of my wife, play Christmas music. Usually I'll just turn on a channel on Pandora. But one thing that I learned a few years ago is that sometimes, not all the time, Pandora will actually play the entire audio from the movie. I heard it a while back, and I actually made a channel, How the Grinch Stole Christmas channel, on there. So it's in hopes that it will pop up more often. But it is the entire audio of the movie. I actually heard it last night when I was getting ready for supper with the kids. It played again, so it was really cool. But whenever it comes on, whatever kids we have around will they'll gather and they'll all listen to it. And I tell you, it truly is a mark of a true classic movie that and really something, excuse me, that you've seen a million times, is that you can visualize the entire movie as the narration goes on. Some of my favorite parts of the movie, number one is the cast. Dr. Seuss wrote this script and the lyrics to the songs. And anytime you can use the original writer, there just seems to be a bit of magic. I'm not sure if it is the kind of the loyalty to the source material or what, but I mean, Godfather had Mario Puzo. This has Dr. Seuss. Just saying, masterpieces, both of them. Put them both up there to right together. I full disclosure, I knew going into this that I would have to potentially tiptoe around the whole Dr. Seuss cancel culture type thing. But no one can deny this guy's popularity in his books when we were growing up. And just saying this guy is kind of my hero in regards to poetry. Even if it's for one simple reason. If you don't have a word that rhymes to complete your stanza, screw it. Just make one up. If you're afraid to end a line with orange because there is no rhyme to orange to follow up with, screw it. Dr. Seuss is like, you know what? Tim O'Hooper of Barange de Forge, it is. And moves on to the next line. So mad props. Another standout in this cast is Chuck Jones, the director and producer, along with Dr. Seuss. Speaking of people who have shaped generations of viewers, here's the guy that helped bring us all of the classic Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies cartoons that we grew up with. And that's not just a generational thing. Kids that grew up in the 60s loved the same cartoons that were being rerun for the kids in the 70s and 80s. And much like those Christmas classics I spoke to, these are things that have stood the test of time because they were quality. And Mr. Jones is the reason this movie even exists. So, a little backstory. Dr. Seuss had absolutely no desire to make any of his books into movies. And that was until Chuck Jones talked him into it. And now, in all fairness, tangentially, we do kind of sort of then have him to blame that decades down the line, we get the eventual Mike Myers Cat in the Hat movie. But let's be fair, that's decades removed. He was long dead by then. Let's not blame him for that. Let's just pretend that doesn't even exist. Let's be honest. Let's focus on the time that the Dr. Seuss brand was still good. Chuck Jones is also the reason that we get Boris Karloff in this movie. For those that follow our social media, and by those I mean the like three of you, and I'm pretty sure that two of those are Russian bots, and the other one is my buddy Harry. Hi Harry, glad you're listening. You guys saw my teaser for this movie was a picture of the Universal Movies classic monster, the Frankenstein's monster. And it's the monster. Frankenstein was the doctor, but whatever, it's the monster. That was Boris Karloff who played him in the classics. So he played that, and he played so many other monsters and murderers of the black and white era of film. So, who better to play the villainous Grinch. And it was because of these roles, actually, that Dr. Seuss was not really a fan of having him on. He thought, rightfully so, that he could be too scary for a kids program. I mean, that's not the knee-jerk choice that you have for a kids Christmas program, I assume. Fair enough. However, Chuck Jones had heard Boris in an audio play of Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book, and he thought that this deep voice was perfect, not just for the narrator, but for the Grinch himself, and he convinced Dr. Seuss to allow it. And I think I speak for everybody that loves this movie. Good call, dude. Good call. Great choice. Speaking of voices, the soundtrack. So the music in this movie is without a doubt iconic, and you would be hard pressed to find someone who cannot belt out at least one lyric from "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," which is sung uncredited, by the way, by Thurl, Thurl, Ravencroft. And if there is a name that is straight out of Harry Potter, if I've ever heard one, it is Thurl Ravencroft. So he is famous because of this song, because Dr. Seuss did and Chuck Jones did a great job of letting people know that that was the person behind it. Again, despite the fact that it was uncredited in the movie. But he was also famous to be known as the voice of Tony the Tiger as well. And, that's great. Sorry, I'm leaving that in. I don't care. Fun fact, the voice of Cindy Lou Who was June Fourway, and she is a very, very famous voice actress. She's actually 50 years old when she's doing this voice, but she's also famously known as Rocky Squirrel from the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons. She was Natasha in the same set of cartoons. She was born in 1917, and she just passed away in 2017 at the age of 99. And she was still working voice acting in 2014 at the age of 96, which is just ridiculous. The animation style itself is also one of the things I enjoy in this movie. It's definitely in the same style as the Looney Tunes. And it wasn't until writing for this episode that it kind of hit me that there is definitely different styles that you can see in animation this far back. So a Disney film from here looks way different than a Warner Brothers cartoon. And I wonder if this was the start of what would continue on as a rivalry. Because, after all, Disney owns Marvel. Warner Bros., they own the DC movies. So just saying, chips lay, land where they may on whose side you're on for that. But it is a rivalry that has been going on for, going on a century now. Some of my least favorite parts, to be fair, I do want to say, some things on these movies as well. But really, the only knock I have on this is the length. You're left wanting more. It was originally only a 30-minute TV special. So this version without commercials is right around 22 minutes or so. And it's so quick that, again, Pandora from time to time will just play the audio from it as a song. However, I will take a short movie, leaving you wanting more, over a bloated 3-hour film that is just stuffed with filler any day of the week. So one thing that is in no way their fault is I can't stand people's adoption of the Grinch as their reason to not be in the Christmas spirit. And people will gleefully call themselves a Grinch when someone like me is rocking the Christmas tunes at the bowling alley in September, whatever. And much like the Grinch's one-to-one comparison to Ebenezer Scrooge, just think of the parallels there. I just, I have to just kind of sit back and I wonder, have you seen how this movie ends? You do know what happens to the Grinch, right? So to be proud that the Grinch is the non-Christmassy one, it's only a 22-minute movie, guys. Maybe you should watch it to the end. But alas, until we meet again, folks, speaking of ends, I've got to get going. My apologies to the folks that were waiting with bated breath for the Sunday release of this episode. I got to celebrate my birthday sick in bed for the entire week, and that along with me putting myself, I only have myself to blame, putting myself on such a tight timeline for announcing on November 1st that I'd be starting to do this and that it would be something releasing starting on the 6th. Might have been a bit of a stretch. And then you throw in some icky flu bug in there, and here we are. I will try to do better. I apologize. But until then, as always, I appreciate your time. Please, please, please take a moment to check us out on social media. We are Support Your Local Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Like and share our info with everyone this holiday season. Give it as a Christmas gift if you wish. It's free. It's a free gift. But until next week, where we take a look at yet another classic on my list, please take care. Enjoy the holidays, folks. And as always, support your local podcast.